Well, all right, it's about 5:33 or 6:33. So we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for joining us. A few people might continue to trickle in. So first of all, my name is Michael Robinson. I'm the administrator for the Montana State Fire Chiefs, and we are so happy that you've joined us this evening. As you know, we've been trying to do these monthly leadership trainings, and they're part of our safer grant that we got from FEMA, along with some other things like our statewide campaign and our fire service database that we're working on. So if you have missed any of these leadership trainings, they are all on our webpage, and we'll put the link to those in the chat after we get started this evening. And this session will also be recorded. So they're great training opportunities if you're looking for something to show your departments in the evenings when you're doing training. These are all great opportunities for you. So we will go ahead and get started. Also, I wanted to let you know that we will be sharing a survey after this. So we'll share that when you log off this evening. We appreciate your input on the trainings and also input for future trainings. And we're always looking for ideas for future training. So please share those with us. Also, we'll have a certificate of attendance as well that we'll be sharing with you. Also, Chief Davis is encouraging some, people to be very interactive, and he'll share that a little bit more when he gets started. So feel free to leave your cameras on and speak up. Just so you know that if your camera is on, you will be in the recording. So just keep that in mind. If that is, just want to make sure that you're aware of that. So tonight our training is a firefighter Mayday will ruin your day by Chief Phil Davis. Phil is a clinical education and resource manager for Masimo Corporation. Prior to joining Masimo, he was a consultant and worked for over 28 years in the fire service at all different levels. His experience also includes part-time adjunct faculty positions at the National Fire Academy, UC Davis, and Chico State, as well as numerous California community colleges. He's authored several professional articles and magazine columns. He was nominated twice as Fire Instructor of the Year, and he has presented dozens of classes in 47 states, including Canada and Guam. He holds his Bachelor's of Science in Health, Bachelor's degree in Health Science, and his Master's degree in Public Administration, and is certified as all kinds of things. So I will let him continue to share if he has other things to introduce himself. But Chief Davis, please go ahead.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. That's very nice. I think my mom must have written that bio years ago. So thanks everybody for joining. And I do want to reinforce the idea that this is conversational. And I know that typically there's some time left at the end for questions and answers, but I do want you, if something comes up during the program, I don't want you to forget it. So if you have a question, please interrupt. It's okay. I don't have a problem with that. Or if you want to type a question into the chat box, we'll certainly see that. The title of this class about having a Mayday ruin your day, that for those of you who are chief officers and company officers, you can imagine that the worst part of our job is to lose a firefighter. And the fact of the matter is that we run literally in the U.S. Fire Service, we run millions and millions of calls where nothing bad happens to us. And we can certainly get complacent about that. It only takes one where you have a firefighter Mayday, a firefighter down, a firefighter lost in the building, that it does in fact ruin your day, that it's hard to recover from things like that. Part of what I do now for Masimo, now this is my retirement gig. I travel around the country and I do this kind of training for firefighters and paramedics with anybody who either has Masimo technology, which is pulse oximetry, carbon monoxide monitoring, and a whole slew of other things, or any department who is considering having Masimo technology. And for those of you who have ALS departments, if you have a LifePak 15, if you have a Zoll X series monitor, if you have one of the new Philips Tempest monitors, you've got Masimo technology embedded in it. So what Masimo asked me to do is to travel around the country and just make sure that our firefighters and our paramedics know how to use the equipment, they use it properly, and that they understand and can interpret the data that they're getting from the equipment in an accurate way. So I'll start off by saying this offer is available to you and your department as well. So if you have Masimo technology or you're considering buying Masimo technology, then I can certainly come to your organization and do a class like this. I'm going to keep this at a high level for the fire chiefs. And when I do the class for firefighters and paramedics, I can kind of get into the weeds a little bit more clinical information. But for tonight, especially with the chiefs in the audience, I'm going to try to keep it at a higher level and not get deep into the clinical minutia, and just talk about some of the policy and the bigger scope issues that can happen with firefighter safety, with carbon monoxide poisoning, and firefighter rehab. So let me through some of the slides here. And like I said, speak up or toss a question into the chat box if you have a question. See if I can get this to move forward here. All right, a little technical problem of trying to get. There we go. There we go. So the interesting part about Masimo technology and the equipment that's used, back on that introductory screen was a picture of what we call the RAD 57. It's a handheld device, and it's probably the most popular and the most durable device in the fire service EMS world for measuring pulse oximetry and carbon monoxide poisoning. It reads your blood with light, and so one of the important things to remember is, if you are a BLS department, you still can use this equipment unless it's prevented by protocol. This is not causing you to poke holes in anybody. This is not an ALS design device. It's simply a sensor that goes on a finger, and it reads your blood with light. One of the interesting components of the technology is, because it is not poking a hole in you and we're not taking blood out, you have to recognize that the accuracy of this is plus or minus 3%. As an old paramedic, I am fine with that. I'm absolutely fine with that, because I was taught you never treat the number, you treat the patient. The number should simply reinforce what you're already thinking is going on with the patient. So the nice thing is, this can be done. You can rule it in or rule it out within 60 seconds, and you're not poking holes in anybody. You're not drawing blood. Interesting story out of Gallup, New Mexico. The Gallup, New Mexico Fire Department have some RAD 57s, and the emergency department did not have any method to non-invasively measure carbon monoxide. So they would call the fire department out to the ER if they had a patient that they suspected had CO poisoning, and they didn't want to do an arterial blood gas. This is kind of the standard of how you determine blood gases. But a couple of things to point out here. This is a great picture. They typically go after your radial artery. Your arteries are deep. Thank goodness they're deep. That's a protection mechanism. But they go in, they take arterial blood out. They send the arterial blood to the lab. And in 10, 15, 20 minutes, you get the results back of what your carbon monoxide was 15 minutes ago. If you use the technology that Masimo provides, you're ruling it in or ruling it out within 60 seconds. here's an important thing to remember is CO calls get missed. They honestly, they get missed in the field because they look like a whole bunch of other things. And if dispatch tells you that you're going to a CO call, you're probably thinking about CO. But if they tell you you're going to a syncopal episode or a person down or chest pain or shortness of breath, CO is probably the last thing on your mind. If you think back to all of the recent non-trauma EMS calls that you've been on, I bet you they're on this list. Take a look at this list for a second. Think about the last 3 or 4 non-trauma EMS calls that you were on. Are they on this list? I bet they are. For those of you who have your camera on, nod your head if you see something on the list. All right, thank you. Thank you. As I was saying, it's easy to miss because it looks like a whole bunch of other things. And for the past 2.5 years, it almost seems like everything that we've been running on has been COVID-19. So it's not a surprise to see this slide that 30 to 50% of CO exposed patients are misdiagnosed. Doctors and nurses aren't looking for it either. It's really not high on their list. And unless they have specific things that they're looking for, it is often missed. Absolutely. I said I wasn't going to get deep in the weeds. I have to throw a pathophysiology slide in here. For those of you who are either current paramedics or former paramedics, you might appreciate this. You know, as it pertains not only on EMS calls, but as it pertains to firefighter safety, you have to take a look at this list and recognize that all the things that happen when you have CO exposure. Probably the most obvious thing on here is vasodilation, where headache is a very common complaint about with CO exposure. What I want to point out to you though, and as it pertains to firefighter safety and long-term firefighter rehab, is the very last part of it. If you look at it, the fact that it causes oxidative cerebral damage, that what is not commonly known is that while the CO is in your body, it can be doing some damage. So the idea of good firefighter rehab and getting the CO out of your body as fast as you possibly can is really an important consideration as a command officer. This is just more information that accentuates the fact that it can cause neurological damage and it can cause some cardiac damage as well while it's in your body. If you look at this slide, I know this is a little bit wordy, but it's a pretty stark reminder that somebody who's had a significant CO exposure has a 3 times higher likelihood of cardiac death within 7 years. That's pretty significant to firefighters. It doesn't matter whether it's a structure fire, a wildland fire, dumpster fire, car fire. Products of combustion are going to give us not only carcinogens, but these products like carbon monoxide. Here again, basic pathophysiology. We know that the CO binds with the hemoglobin with a 250 times greater affinity than oxygen. The example that I use is the oxygen's happily riding along in a seat on the bus, and CO gets on the bus and just throws it out of the seat. It has no control over that whatsoever. That once the CO attaches, then it doesn't give up that seat to the oxygen. The only way that we can accelerate that is to flood it with high flow oxygen. Is going to help remove that CO and get it out of our body as fast as we possibly can. Just a few examples. You know, we tend to not hear about CO calls. It doesn't make national news, but it happens almost daily. I have 3 Google alerts set up on my phone. One is carbon monoxide. 2 is Massimo. I want to know what's going on with the company. And 3, of the San Francisco Giants, my baseball team. So every single day, I get a Google alert about CO calls that are happening somewhere around the country or around the world. This is a Google screenshot, and really it's the third story down that caught my attention. This was a few years ago. You can see the date, March 25th of 2018. This family of four decided to go to Mexico for spring break. Woohoo, let's get out of the cold. Let's go to Mexico for spring break. They rented a house. It had a faulty appliance and they all died. Mom, dad, boy, girl, they all died. That really hit home and it caught my attention. The one thing I want to emphasize and I really want to encourage is for you to not only have this technology, which you put on patients to read how much CO is in the body, but I really encourage you to have ambient air monitoring on your EMS bag, your first in bag, whatever you call your bag that goes into the house, because you need to protect your firefighters as well. If they're going into an environment where there's carbon monoxide, that's why the 911 call was placed. They're not going to know unless there's some ambient monitoring going on. This is what drove me to buy for myself and for everybody in my family who does any traveling. I bought them a CO detector to take on their travels. Whether it's a hotel, whether it's an Airbnb, a VRBO, whether you're staying with a friend, you can't really trust the fact that everyone's going to be monitoring CO the way that they should. So I would encourage you to put a passive CO monitor on your EMS bag, your first in bag. I'm going to run through a few examples here of tragedies that have happened. If you see this happened in Colorado. Cody and Shelby Allen, two firefighters, a husband and wife, they died in their own home because they didn't have a working CO detector. This call just happened in Colorado back last month, June 7th. And the reason that I put this slide in, I want to make the point here that when you think you're going to a CO call with a single patient, you are probably going to be shocked to know that if it's a facility like this where you have multiple residences or multiple hotel rooms, multi-family occupancy, you're going to have CO throughout that building. It's actually pretty shocking how easily CO moves through the building. And the point here is, do you think you're going to one or two patients? Nope. You got to start knocking on doors, left, right, up, down. You've got to start checking people because other folks are going to have some CO contamination as well. The CO freely moves throughout a building much easier than we ever knew before. You might have heard about this. This did make national news. Americans died in the Bahamas. They went to the Sandals Resort in the Bahamas. This slide says that 3 American tourists died. Actually, the 4th died after this was published. So 4 Americans died at a pretty high-end resort in the Bahamas from CO poisoning. There was no monitoring. How would they know? Pardon me. Here's an example from Allentown, Pennsylvania. 28 kids and 4 adults in a daycare. If you have a daycare in your district, if you've got a hotel, if you've got condominiums, if you have churches, if you have, I can go on and on and on with occupancies where you're going to have a lot of people, you have the potential for this to be an MCI. Not only running on a call like this, but imagine being a young parent getting the call that your child's en route to the hospital because they have CO poisoning. 22 people in this Omaha home were treated for CO poisoning. Can't be judgmental about 22 people living in a home. I don't know what the circumstances are, but as a former chief, I'm guessing that if they don't have a working CO detector, they may not have a working smoke detector either. And so I'd probably get back in there and make sure that this is a safer environment in the future. I mentioned hotels. So you can see here, Marysville, Ohio, had 7 in critical condition from a CO leak within the hotel. Cherry Creek is outside of Denver. They had to evacuate the entire Doubletree Hotel because there was CO throughout the building. The Mormon Church, the big Mormon church in Provo, Utah, they had a problem with their heating system. 59 people were exposed to carbon monoxide. 29 were so sick, they ended up in a hyperbaric chamber to try to clear out the CO. This is another one. FDNY had to clear out 15 apartments. Well, where did that CO originate? Didn't originate in 15 apartments, originated in 1, maybe even the basement, but it easily travels throughout a building where you have multiple occupancies. I'm going to give you a second to look at this. I was skeptical when I heard that CO could go through drywall, but then I found this study in the Journal of the American Medical Association that said, yes, it can. It can seep through drywall at dangerous levels. We don't think about that. We think about the normal way that air, smoke, fire moves through a building. Drywall does not stop CO from moving from compartment to compartment. Obviously, HVAC systems, common attics, stairwells, open windows, open doors, it moves around quite easily. That's why we end up with these multi-casualty incidents, because it starts in one part of the building, but it quickly spreads throughout. I've been to Louisiana several times since Hurricane Ida, and if you glance down here, you can see that in this one parish alone, they had 242 documented cases of CO poisoning. If they had 242 documented cases, can you imagine how many they really had? It's probably 2 or 3 times that. In this part of southern Louisiana where the hurricane hit hardest, they were without power for 90 days. When you're without power for 90 days, you're basically back in the Wild West or the caveman days. Fortunately, we do a good job of training people to be ready for disasters, disaster preparedness. Yay. Well, one of the problems they had was that they had thousands of generators running at the same time within their community. They also had people that would bring their grill into the garage or into the house to cook. And so they had no recollection of the danger, if you will, of what they were bringing into the house and contaminating their family. This is a pretty standard hazardous materials kind of look at CO. If you look at the axis on the left side, you've got the parts per million. And then across the bottom, you have how long are you exposed? So really, it's a balancing act of what's the exposure amount for how long is going to tell you potentially how sick you're going to be. So the colors match up with the symptoms relating to the CO concentration. And as you can see, it doesn't take long at a fairly low concentration of parts per million to get you pretty sick. I'll give you a second to read this. I'll shut up for a second and let you read this. This is a real interesting story out of Redmond, Washington. So here again, power outage caused them to fire up their generators. Great, we're happy that they have generators. We want people to be prepared. However, they don't account for wind shifting. They don't account for where the exhaust is going. And obviously in this case, it turned out to be very bad for a couple of people. The interesting part here, and I always laugh when I'm teaching this class to say, a 71-year-old guy with 45% CO, that's a tough guy. That's a tough old bird, because normally 45% can do some real serious damage. Coma and brain damage is what is estimated that will happen to you at 45%. People leave their cars running in the garage accidentally. I'm not talking about suicide here. It's so easy for us to walk away from our car now that most of us have a keyless fob. You can get out of your car, you can be distracted with a call, with a text, unbuckling your kid, and it's easy to forget. And so this is a more common problem than you might imagine. Boating. I know that you have boating in many of your jurisdictions. And so I tossed in a couple of slides here that departments across the country are seeing drowning calls that are really not just a drowning call. What caused the person to become unconscious and subsequently drown? And many of these calls they're discovering are coming from carbon monoxide poisoning while out on the boat. As a matter of fact, Oklahoma has taken it so seriously. There was a young man, a 9-year-old named Andrew Free, who died while out on his family's boat. So the Oklahoma legislature has passed a bill requiring a sticker to be prominently displayed with the warning of carbon monoxide poisoning. Just toss this in to remind us that when we're measuring the environment, we're measuring it in terms of parts per million. When we measure it in the body, we're measuring a percentage of hemoglobin. If you have access to a hyperbaric chamber, I don't know where in Montana might be your closest hyperbaric chamber, but the 3 questions that I always ask is, do you know where it is? Number 2, do you know its hours of operation? Do they have business hours? Most of them are open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Or are they open 24 hours a day? And lastly, are you able to go directly there without taking the patient first to the ER? Those are questions that I can't answer, but I always encourage people to know the answer to those questions before they need to know the answer to those questions. Hyperbaric is going to be your fastest way to get the CO out of your body. The next best way is high flow oxygen with a non-rebreather mask. And it'll eventually clear out if you do nothing but breathe room air 4 to 6 hours, as you can see here. This applies to us as well. You know, I'm talking about both sides of the coin. And you deal with EMS patients, you deal with EMS calls where you have CO poisoning, but you have to recognize the firefighter risk of the carcinogens that we breathe, and all the products of combustion that ultimately can do short-term damage and long-term damage. I'll even tell you a quick anecdotal story that I was on a couple of the CAL FIRE incident management teams during my career, and I heard about one of the teams who had set up in a fairly rural county at the fairgrounds, and they brought in several of the very, very large generators to supply power to the fairgrounds. What they didn't realize is of the 6 or 8 or 10 generators that they brought in, they were basically poisoning the incident management team that was running the incident at this fairgrounds. It wasn't the entire incident management team, but a good majority of them got CO poisoning, and they quickly discovered it was from all the generators that were running in the fairgrounds. I have to put in a plug for NFPA 1584. Everybody knows NFPA standards are voluntary. This happens to be a very good standard, and it's all about protecting your people. And I think that's what it's all about here, is the health and safety of our folks. We'd like to keep everybody healthy enough to continue their shift. We want to keep them healthy enough to continue their career and have a long, happy, healthy retirement as well. I'll call your attention just to the title of this. And you know, I put a picture here of a really big Southern California fire. It gets people's attention when you talk about firefighter rehab and fires. But I also want to reinforce the fact that certainly in in the West here, it's been very warm. It's been way into the hundreds. I was in Phoenix last week. It was 111. And when the firefighters are out running calls in that kind of weather, let me toss this example out to you. It's 3 p.m. in the afternoon. You get an awful crash. It requires you to extricate a couple of people. Takes you 50 minutes to extricate 2 people out of this crash. The firefighters are in full turnouts. They're schlepping around heavy extrication tools. They've burned up all their calories. They're exhausted. They're dehydrated. That has nothing to do with the fire, but I would submit to you that they are spent and they probably need firefighter rehab. And let me move on here and just say, I hope your department isn't the department on the left with the real pretty policy with multi-colors and a flow chart, but in reality, firefighter rehab looks more like the picture on the right. It's nice to have a policy. It's nice to have the flow chart and to know what to do for firefighter rehab, but actually putting it in practice is more important. Making sure that your folks are taken care of. You don't have to have a fancy rig. This is out of Orange County, Florida, but you don't have to have a fancy rig. You don't have to have a setup that looks like you're going camping. You can do good firefighter rehab on a much smaller scale. It doesn't have to be like this. Hydration is probably the single most important thing. And it might surprise you, it might not surprise you to know that most of us, as red-blooded Americans, we are dehydrated. We just don't drink enough water. You know, it's coffee, sodas, energy drinks, sports drinks, beer, wine, cocktails, and the list goes on. And water is somewhere way down the list. We tend to be dehydrated to start with. And after you work your tail off at an incident, you're even more dehydrated. The 9-step process that you can find in NFPA 1584 says get out of the weather, rest and recover, cool or warm, depending upon the climate that you're in, rehydrate. I can't stress that enough. We are dehydrated for the most part to begin with. Rehydration is so important. Replace calories, and I will even add replace quality calories. That years ago, I know that we used to judge the size of an incident by how many dozen donuts we would order for rehab. Those are not quality calories. We need to have quality calories to replace all the calories that have been spent doing whatever the emergency was that we were operating on. Medical monitoring is kind of the crux of the title of this program, and it started out by saying a firefighter mayday can ruin your day. And if you're not doing medical monitoring on your folks, the potential is there that somebody who is medically not qualified to be working that incident is going to continue to work and can potentially become your firefighter down, your firefighter mayday, your firefighter lost in the building, and it will ruin your day. Absolutely. Accountability, release, all of those things are so important. And I would just encourage you to reinforce to your folks that firefighter rehab is not punishment. When you send a group of firefighters to rehab and tell them, take a break, you're not punishing them. Some firefighters, all they want to do is go get that next bottle of air and get back in there. But as a command officer, as a chief officer, it's your responsibility to make sure your folks are healthy enough to get that next bottle and to go back in. That's all I have. I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate the invitation to even do this program. And I want to reiterate something I said at the beginning, which was, if you're interested in hosting me, and there's no cost. Did I say that before? There's no cost. I'm happy to come up to Montana and do this program for your organization, your department. Obviously, if you're a small rural department, bigger bang for the buck kind of thing, we'd like to get multiple departments together, maybe at a county chiefs meeting, a county firefighter association meeting, something where we have a decent number of folks. But I'm happy to come up and deliver a little bit more detail than what you saw tonight. And my information, my contact information is here on the screen. So I'll open it up for questions now. I think there are a couple things in the chat. I didn't look.
Yeah, hi Chief. Thank you so much. That was really fascinating. So we do have a question from Amy. I don't know if you can see it in the chat, or I can read it to you.
Let me look here. The thresholds are the red flags about the vitals. Actually, I think, if I remember correctly, I haven't opened up 1584 in the past few weeks, but I think that there are some parameters in there about the health of your folks, blood pressures, temperature, heart rate, things like that. A lot of departments use whatever the medical protocols are for EMS and apply the same to the firefighters. A lot of departments have their own medical direction, and their physicians have their own opinion about what those thresholds might be. I think is sort of basic assessment skills of, you have to decide, does the firefighter look like they need to break, or are they okay to go back to work? I don't know the specifics because I haven't cracked the standard in a little while, but I think that there are some specifics in there.
Thanks, Amy. If anyone else has questions, you can either type it in the chat, or you can certainly unmute yourself and just ask. Or if you have any comments for Chief Davis, please feel free to unmute yourself. Thanks, Kim. So Kim has put the certification of attendance and the link to the evaluation, and we also put the link to previous presentations, and this is also Chief Davis's presentation will be on that webpage as well. So just one last chance, if you have any questions for Chief Davis or any comments. I found it fascinating. We have a monitor here in our beach house, and I've always kind of thought, oh, is that overkill? Or my husband, he had to have that. And now I'm like, need to make sure everyone I love has one. It's like, it's really fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Too many lives have been lost unnecessarily, and that's the tragedy. Is it's completely preventable. I would say 25, 30 years ago, when CO detectors were sort of new in the market, they were less reliable. And I remember being a firefighter, a fire captain, running CO calls and thinking, what a nuisance this is. That's not the case these days. These CO detectors are very accurate, spot on. And when one goes off, you got to take it seriously, because it's deadly.
Yeah, it seems like they should just go hand in hand with smoke detectors these days. I don't know. Maybe they do, and I'm not as intimate, as the people that are actually out there. But it seems like we need to be paying a little bit more attention to that for sure.
So my information's here on the screen, and if anybody's interested in hosting some classes or bringing it to your county, then please get in touch with me.
Great. Thank you so much, Chief Davis. We really appreciate you.
You are welcome.
And thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. Have a great rest of your evening, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
All right. Take
Bye
good care.
all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chief.